Have you ever wondered why, when we talk about the indigenous people of what is now called the United States, somehow it feels like we're talking about a people group from a very long time ago? But would you be surprised to learn that this is due to over a century's worth of U.S. government policy towards Native Americans? Hi, my name's Josiah with Diversify Our Parks, and I am obsessed with the way that we talk about history in the great outdoors. During the 1800s, the United States was consolidating its power on the East Coast. Spain was losing power on the West Coast, and Native communities in the Midwest were preparing for a century-long fight for their sovereignty against invading whites. It was during these years that Americans on the East Coast embraced a national ethos that can easily be found in artwork and in literature and political ideas, which historians call the myth of the vanishing Indian. White supremacists in the United States government created this idea that Native Americans were predestined and doomed to extinction. The myth of the vanishing Indian was a self-fulfilling prophecy pursued by federal government officials and agents throughout the 1800s that aligned with a wider belief in President James K. Polk's manifest destiny, or the idea that American territorial expansion by white settlers was both inevitable and preordained by God. Over the subsequent decades, national expansion increased at a breakneck pace as the United States acquired new territories and citizens pushed west across the Appalachian Mountains and beyond the Mississippi River. Indigenous groups who had lived in these places for millennia now faced displacement at the hands of white settlers, often resulting in violent conflict between the two groups. These genocidal behaviors were legalized and supported by lawmakers throughout the 19th century, ultimately reaching their peak when President Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act of 1830. Jackson strongly believed that Native Americans were obstacles to civilization, negotiating nearly 70 removal treaties. I need you to listen closely to this message to Congress in 1830, wherein President Jackson proclaimed, "It gives me pleasure to announce to Congress that the benevolent policy of the government steadily pursued for nearly 30 years in relation to the removal of the Indians beyond the white settlements is approaching to a happy consummation. Rightly considered, the policy of the general government toward the red man is not only liberal, but generous. Indians are unwilling to submit to the laws of the states and mingle with their population. To save him from utter annihilation, the general government kindly offers him a new home." This sentiment was echoed by California's first governor and former Tennessee slaveholder, Peter Burnett, in a speech that he gave in 1851. "A war of extermination will continue to be waged between the races until the Indian race becomes extinct, must be expected. While we cannot anticipate this result, but with painful regret, the inevitable destiny of the race is beyond the power or wisdom of man to avert." Given this inaccurate and purposely misleading ideology, it makes so much sense that so much of our country views indigenous issues as something that was over and done with centuries ago. Thanks for joining me today on this journey through U.S. history.